We're pleased to have as our guest today the Adjutant General for the state of Tennessee, Major General Jeff Holmes. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good
And
to be here.
congratulations. I'm so proud of you and proud for you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored to be here, and I want to thank you because, you know, it's just, who would have thought I'd be sitting here talking to a legend?
Oh, no.
And I'm telling you, you know,
Legend.
a legend of this city and this county.
Old.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but you know, thank you for your service to our nation and then our community and as our state.
Well, thank you. It's been a privilege to serve in various capacities. But just want to know more about your duty. Now, Governor Lee appointed you in January of this year, right?
Yes, sir.
You were then Deputy Adjutant General prior to that time?
Actually, there was a position in between that. I was Deputy Adjutant General, and then I was assigned as the Deputy Commanding General for First Army, which is headquartered at Rock Island, Illinois. Okay. And we have, First Army have 2 divisions in the east and the west, and we have about 18 brigades. Okay. And so that was my last assignment.
Do you still maintain a civilian job?
Actually, I do not. I was an architect. Yeah, well, I think you could say on leave. I was a sole practitioner, so when I left, it just kind of stopped. Okay. But yeah, I had to divest all my projects in December in making the transition to this.
Well, I knew you had a fine architectural firm and were involved in many wonderful projects.
Right, around here. I got the opportunity to do some projects around here. It was pretty exciting.
Jeff, as Adjutant General for the state of Tennessee, you're a member of the governor's cabinet, right?
Yes, sir.
And considered a commissioner, is that the title as well?
That's correct.
Adjutant General.
Right.
What are you in charge of as an Adjutant General? I know it involves a lot of military.
Right. Well, we're in charge. I'm in charge of the Army and the Air National Guard of Tennessee. Okay. And that equates to about 13,000 total. Okay. And that includes some civilian employees as well. So our number one priority is to prepare our airmen and soldiers for their wartime task. Okay. You know, the National Guard is dual-hatted, as we call it. So they have a state mission to support state citizens in case of any kind of a domestic response. Could be, you know, a natural disaster or man-made disaster. And then also we're the combat reserve for the Army and the Air Force. So we do, you know, deployments worldwide depending on whatever the need is from the Secretary of the Army or the Secretary of the Air Force.
And you're headquartered at the Armory on Sidco Drive in Nashville?
Right, okay. Joint Force Headquarters, right there off of 65.
How much time do you spend on the road, so to speak, or in the air?
Well, it kind of comes in groups. I just got back from Kosovo and come back from Ukraine. We have soldiers in both of those countries, and I'll be here in the States for a couple of weeks, then I'll go to Poland. And we also have a task force, about 780 soldiers in Poland.
Is that recent?
They've been there for a year. Okay. So this was our first rotation, and we've got another one rotating in behind that. So we're going to replace that 780 with another 780. Okay. So it's a battalion, squadron size element, and it'll be part of you know, the NATO force over there.
And this is Tennessee National Guard?
Tennessee National Guard. Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then the Kosovo, our aviation battalion, assault battalion, is in Kosovo. Again, part of a NATO force that's been in Kosovo for many years. Mm-hmm. And then we have a smaller contingent of about 380 soldiers, again from Tennessee, that are in Ukraine. Okay. And they've created they're working at a training complex to train the Polish army, and it's a NATO operation as well. So you have British, you have a lot of coalition partners that are conducting that training. So it's a venue for the Polish to send their units in and then train and then go back to the front, as we call it.
Do you have other deployments around the world other than Europe?
We do. It depends on what the Secretary of the Army and you know, what their requirements are, but we have units that are going to Kuwait, and that's a regular rotation for the National Guard, and we'll be sending some of those units out this fall. So it's about every year. Right now we have 1,500. That can fluctuate up to 3,000 in some cases if we send a larger unit in total. So we've had probably upwards to 4,000 or 5,000, I think, at the peak at certain times in the past 15 years.
What's a typical day for the Adjutant General of the state of Tennessee, or is there one?
Well, I don't know that there's probably never a typical day. A lot of meetings, and I got an apartment in Nashville because I live in Lascassas.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, I couldn't tolerate the drive, so I got an apartment in Nashville. So I usually wake up and we'll do a group of us will do some physical training in the morning. Or we just go in and start the day. I usually don't try to schedule anything before 9 o'clock, so I can kind of go in and just kind of get everything set up. But we'll work in some physical training every day, and that may be at lunch. Our command group, which consists of about 8 of us, and that's my 2 deputies, a deputy adjutant general, and an assistant adjutant general Army, assistant adjutant Air. We got a small command group, and we'll get together and try to do some kind of physical training every day. And then the rest of the day is you've taken up with conference calls, meetings, checking on units and things like that, because every unit is in some transition or progression toward a deployment. Readiness is our main focus. A lot of training, a lot of gunnery, depending on what the unit does, but just monitoring that and then kind of making sure everybody's kind of in lockstep for their next deployment, whatever that might be.
And what you told me, you apparently do a lot of traveling too.
A lot of traveling. I'll go down to Fort Hood, which is one of our mobilization stations. So when we send a unit, they will go to Fort Hood or Fort Bliss. It could be any other place too. It could be Camp Shelby, Mississippi, Fort Stewart, depending on what that selected mobilization site is. So they'll go down there for a period of time, and they'll go through the kind of the last minute training, depending on what part of the world that they're going to. And then they'll deploy from there. So I've been down at Fort Hood. Fort Bliss is another location that we send units through. And then some of that travel is up in D.C. And then Fort Leavenworth or Fort Bragg, depending on what the meeting topic is about.
Do you have any relationships with Fort Campbell?
Yes, we actually have a unit that's called. It's part of the Total Force Policy that was a policy that's been in place about 10 years, and it's called an Associated Unit Program. And so we actually have a transportation company that is part of the 101st. So they're guardsmen, they're National Guardsmen, but they drill and do all their training with the 101st. They wear 101st patches, so they're all integrated with the 101st. And we'll probably expand that. So yeah, we have a relationship with the 101st. We do a lot of training with them, our aviators do, and the other units that at Fort Campbell.
In talking earlier, we were discussing various means of communication today, how it has changed over the years. Tell me about how you use Twitter and Facebook and other means of communication.
I am not an expert. I don't even think I would be classified as a novice user. But I recognize that the generation today, and really our society, that is how everyone communicates. And so the days of communicating through the first sergeant, telling him what you want to put out, and he stands in formation, delivers it, that's still there, and we still do that. But to reach 13,000 soldiers and airmen, and let everybody, affect everybody with that message, you really got to use all means of communication. And so we try to do, we did about 3 of them, we try to do a little 3 or 4 minute segment that we'll videotape, and it'll be me or some of my command team, trying to put out a message, and then we'll post that on there through a number of sources, social media.
You do that daily?
We do that monthly.
Monthly, okay.
Yeah, it's an experiment that I wanted to try in January, so we could communicate, whatever message we want to put out. And it's been amazed. I've been amazed at how many people actually get their information from that source. So whether it be Twitter, Instagram, with pictures and things like that, and Facebook. So trying to look at all means of communication and trying to get the message out, whatever the message is.
Well, I just had a friend to give me a lesson in Facebook, trying to learn more about how to use Facebook. It's
Facebook.
Very interesting.
And every time you try to get competent in one, they'll develop a new one.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
When Twitter came out, I always try to access the sports talk shows and get instead of waiting on the call-in line, I'd try to tweet, my question.
On there.
Yeah, I was doing it for a month. I said, they never answered my question. And my wife looked at it and she says, well, you're just tweeting yourself.
Oh.
So I never did, I just gave up on that, I never did figure that out.
Jeff, you're a graduate of the University of Tennessee with a degree in architecture, I believe.
Yes, sir, and an alumni of MTSU too.
Oh, yes,
I
right.
started at MTSU.
Okay.
And so went through what was called the pre-architectural program. I think they developed that for me.
Okay.
So that's where I started, absolutely.
Well, we have two members of the cabinet then at MTSU alumni, the Commissioner of Agriculture
Right.
and the Adjutant General.
Right, right,
Great.
right. And
Commissioner
yeah,
Adjutant, I believe.
we've already buddied up, so
I'm
we
sure
sat
you
next
have.
to each other
I'm
at the
sure you
cabinet
have.
meetings.
Okay. Tell us about your architectural career. Well, let me go back to the military. You're 40 years on military. Sort of bring us up to date on some of the things you've done in between. You told me that you were deployed 2 years.
Right.
A few years ago.
That was in 2004 and 2005.
Okay.
It was part of the 278th Armored Cavalry Regiment. I was a squadron commander, and that was our first deployment.
Okay.
That was my first deployment,
Yeah,
and that
okay.
unit's first deployment.
Okay.
Prior to that, we had deployed other units, after 9/11, and even back as far as the Gulf War. But that was my first deployment. Was 04 and 05.
Okay, and what were you doing there now? A little bit more.
Well, that was what was the operation was called Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Yeah,
And so
okay.
that was after the initial invasion.
Okay.
And then that was right after really stability operations, and that's when the insurgency really started becoming effective against coalition forces.
Okay.
So the regiment was deployed, and I was a squadron commander in Cookeville, the 2nd Squadron.
Okay.
It used to be 3rd Squadron, now it's 2nd Squadron. And so we were deployed for a year in Diyala province, and so we landed in Kuwait, and we drove up and occupied our forward battle positions, and so we were there a year and dealt with a lot of insurgency activity. At that time, we were trying to train and did successfully train the new Iraqi army.
Okay.
And there was a lot of effort from a lot of nations to train, the police force and things like that. We were instituting a whole new government, so that was quite interesting. We were there during the first elections in January the 30th, 2005, and that was the first really elections that everyone had the opportunity to vote with the polling sites and how they voted, and how all that worked with provincial governments and electing representatives and things like that. It was all very foreign to them.
What is the most challenging assignment you've had other than your present one?
I would say the deployment in
Was?
04 and 05.
Okay.
I think that was it seemed like one long day because of the operational tempo and just the austere environment and then the complexities of the different attacks. So it was pretty stressful. I don't know that any of our formation, we had 780, I don't know that any one of them really slept soundly for any period of time. We got a lot of indirect fire at night.
Oh, did you? Okay.
We couldn't have, we didn't have any, we were a blacked out fob, they called it, which we didn't have any white light at night because it would just, give a target
Sure,
for
yeah.
indirect fire. And then the missions were quite stressful, and so that was probably the most challenging part. I would say it was equally rewarding and fulfilling, and I think if you would ask any one of my soldiers, they would tell you the same, because seeing the effect that we had and our presence had on the population there, and seeing how eager they were to kind of develop a new democracy in their country, and just the access to voting, they had choices that they'd never had before. And then dealing with the different groups, the Shia, the Sunni, the Kurds, the Turkmen. In that area, you had all that influence. So our area was really called Little Iraq because we had kind of one each of everything that was in that area.
Were the people receptive? I'm talking about the average person.
I would think, depending on what group they were with.
Oh, okay.
I think the Kurdish population were very receptive. In fact, we've developed a lot of great friends with the Kurdish. We trained a number of battalions, Iraqi Army battalions, and that area was predominantly Kurdish, though the Iraqi Army was totally integrated. So we had Sunni and Shia that served, along with the Kurds. But their tradition was they segmented each other. So if you developed a platoon, it would be a platoon of Sunnis, a platoon of Kurds.
They
didn't like to kind of intermingle.
Okay.
So we kind of broke that up, and it took some time to for them to develop trust with their fellow soldier. They had to develop it pretty quick for some of the tasks that they were given and doing. But it was one of those things where you have a generation that are kind of, I don't want to say set in their ways, but they have influences and a frame of reference, and sometimes those scars run very deep. So they're really not going to change. You just kind of get at the new generation, show them what can be, and then let them kind of carry it forward.
Okay.
But the community was, we had 6 cities, fairly small cities, and each one of those cities had its own personality. So when we rolled into one city, we knew that everybody liked us, glad we were there. When we rolled into other cities, we knew that they didn't really care for us. Yeah, totally opposite. And you could do both cities, in a day. So you'd go from, people waving at you to people shooting at you in one day.
You mentioned the Kurdish. Don't we have a large Kurdish community in Davidson County?
We do. We have, last count, we had about 10,000. I'm sure it's probably grown. 10,000. Yeah, some of my interpreters were actually residents of Nashville.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, one of General Nazem, who I still am in contact with, he just got relocated to Nashville last year.
Okay.
He's been here about a year and a half. And I worked very closely with him on the Iranian border because he had a screening mission on the Iranian border, so I worked with his battalion. And so we got to know each other very well, trusted each other. So it was a great bonding and friendship that we still have today.
I can imagine, yeah. What thing in your training in your life prepared you the best for what you've been able to do and accomplish in the military? Any one thing you can feel was the greatest influence on you?
I don't know that I could say any one single event. I had some great mentors, and joining in '79, we still had some Vietnam era soldiers.
Oh, did you? Okay.
My first platoon sergeant was a Vietnam veteran. One of my battalion commanders was a Vietnam veteran, and just being mentored by them, they'd been there, so they had experienced all the things and the hardship of war, and those leadership characteristics and traits, that they used was very beneficial, and so I valued their mentorship because that it's hard to replicate that in training.
Oh, I'm sure.
We try to get at real live, realistic training, and we try to induce all the stresses associated with what you're going to experience in combat. But some things you just really can't replicate. As much as you make it realistic in training, if you're using blanks or whatever in simulation, you really don't have that, the importance of the mission and everything, but you really don't have that edge of this could be final.
I'm sure.
The finality of it.
Yeah, right.
So, just kind of getting this perspective of someone that had been there, was important for me.
The National Guard is constantly, I guess, in need of recruits and additional members.
Exactly, right. That's the challenge that I think is cycled. We offer a lot of tremendous benefits, and
such as?
Well, we have tuition assistance.
Okay.
So we have what's called the Strong Act, and with Tennessee Promise, Tennessee has really made it real easy for those eligible to go to college for free.
Yeah.
And actually, when the state did that, which I think is great, but that was one of our big recruiting tools, is we could offer the GI Bill and things like that. So now we had basically that recruiting tool was gone. So we found another recruiting tool, which in order to get certain benefits, you have to be in service, like the GI Bill, you have to be in service for a period of years. A lot of these youngsters, young men and women, when they make a decision, it's not, I don't want to say it's not long-term, but they can change their mind pretty quickly.
Sure.
So when they decide that they want to go to school, that they want to join and get the benefits to go to school, our Strong Act allows them to go to school that next day. So they raise their right hand, fill out the paperwork, and they're a member of the Tennessee National Guard, and they'll do basic training and advanced individual training, but they can start enrolling in classes, very soon after that. So they can actually, get the benefit of going to college and start building toward that immediately.
What would be your advice to a young person today to be successful? Not necessarily militarily, but militarily is one of the great advantages and opportunities.
I would say to be perseverant.
Okay.
And don't lose focus on your objective, and try not to look too far out.
Okay.
I think anything that's hard to do, if you look too far out, there's a lot of obstacles that prevent you from getting there.
Okay.
And I think either one of those obstacles can discourage you. And so I think looking at breaking it up into small incremental steps. And so I just want to get to here. When I get to there, then I'm going to look at the next hill mass, and I just want to get to there.
Rather than look at that long
Yeah,
range thing.
I think it's nothing. That's your aim point.
Sure.
But break it up into small, achievable steps.
All right. Okay.
And because a lot of things worth doing are very hard, and so breaking it into small, achievable goals kind of let you feel progress toward that objective. And you can kind of build from that without kind of just completely demoralizing you.
Okay.
It's like that's too hard. It's too far out there. There's too many steps to it.
Yeah, physically and mentally both. I think
Right.
it's a very difficult thing. It's a very
Absolutely. Right. Sure.
difficult. Let's talk about your early life in Murfreesboro, coming years as a young boy. And growing up here, going to MTSU, and eventually on to University of Tennessee.
Well, I had a great life in Murfreesboro. Like you, it was a little bit different. A little bit smaller.
Right.
But I moved here when I was 4, and my dad was an educator in West Tennessee. So I was born in West Tennessee, and he got a position at the state, which required him to travel from one end of the state to the next. And so he said, I think we need to live somewhere where it's easy to travel. So we picked Murfreesboro because it was at the center of the state. So we moved here when I was 4.
Good decision.
A good decision. Moved here when I was 4, and my mother still lives in the house that we grew up in, me and my brother.
Okay.
And we were actually within, I don't want to say walking distance, but bicycle riding distance of downtown. So right out Woodbury Highway.
Yeah, okay.
So in fact, you could get there by skateboard in some cases. So we got to really grow up in Murfreesboro, and we lived really near MTSU's campus. So we could walk across a few pastures and be at MTSU's campus. And my mother retired from MTSU.
I knew. I remember.
So we would go over there and play. We'd play in the soccer field and football field, and that was our playground. Was MTSU's campus.
Okay. Did you go to Central High School?
I did not. I went to Oakland.
You went to Oakland. Excuse me. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
My brother went to Central, and then I think Oakland had been. It was probably about 4 or 5 years, and that was about.
Yeah, I guess it was at that time. I remember.
Yeah.
Remember, Oakland and Riverdale high schools were built with an appropriation of $6.75 million.
Couldn't do that nowadays.
Can't even do.
I don't know if you could do the parking lot.
No, I don't think you could. But I remember being in the county court, now the county commission, that was the appropriation to do that. Just think what wonderful schools they've made.
They were, yeah. And I think the transition of having one central high school and then 2 competing high schools, and we all went through. Well, I went to Central Middle School at the time before I went to Oakland. So. We had all these friendships and stuff, and then at the end of that, you're just like, well, where are you going? I'm going to go to Oakland, Riverdale. But we still maintained a lot of friends just because they went to Riverdale.
Oh yeah.
And then our neighborhood was really split amongst both. I mean, literally, my friends across the road went to Riverdale.
Oh really?
Me and my brother went to Oakland.
Okay.
So it was good. It was good growing up here. The town was small enough where you could really have friends all over town, and there was a lot of stuff to do. With MTSU, had a lot of events.
Always
MTSU.
athletic events, art, and
absolutely.
theater, music.
I remember MTSU won the OVC championship, and I got everybody's autograph.
Boy, did you really?
Oh yeah, I would hang out down there and get everybody's autograph and stuff. So
did you play sports?
I didn't.
Did not.
I did not. I played just kind of intramural stuff.
Yeah,
football.
well,
I loved football and stuff like
Didn't
that.
where you played football?
Yeah,
and
I was a percussionist in the band.
Okay. Oh, yeah, okay.
I was. Yeah.
And who was the band director? Do you remember?
Bass. Stan Bass.
Yeah, okay. Oh, Stan Baskin.
Baskin, right.
Yes.
Stan
Oh,
Baskin.
yes, right.
Yep, Stan Baskin.
Stan just recently passed away.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Okay. He was the band director, and we built our large percussion section. That was when the drum and bugle corps became really a thing, and one of the measuring sticks was how big was your percussion area. So we had a lot of bass drums and a lot of that stuff. So that was fun, exciting.
Did you participate in the Contest of Champions?
I did. We did. In fact, they had a tryout. MTSU had a tryout, and they were building a drum and bugle corps, and they allowed high school seniors to try out for it. And and I actually made that
Okay.
as a high school senior, and then one of my buddies from Riverdale made it as well. So we got to participate at that,
Yeah,
and that was
good.
pretty exciting.
Let's talk about your architectural experience a bit before we
Okay.
close out.
Okay.
I know you had experience with a lot of buildings and
I did.
developments.
I-
What would stand out most of all?
Well,
Anything?
I had the ability to work on a lot of unique projects.
Okay.
And those unique projects, you know, a hospital, I did a lot of hospitals.
Oh, did you?
Baptist
Okay.
Hospital and St. Thomas Hospital.
Okay.
When I started with the firm, really the only firm that I ever worked for as an architect, other than when I sold my stock and developed my own practice. But we did a lot of medical design.
Okay.
And so I really interned as a medical architect. So, but you know, I don't want to say there's nothing really anything glamorous about hospitals, very complicated.
I bet.
But some of my more unique projects, like the Miller Coliseum,
Okay.
that was obviously very unique because of it was an equine center and the breeding
yeah.
science
Yeah.
lab for tissue. The State Fire Academy in Shelbyville, was
Shelbyville,
my project.
right.
That was very unique for the training aspect of it. So those projects probably stick out more than any.
Okay.
Those unusual projects, probably, I'd say once in a lifetime projects for the most part
yeah.
for me.
Those especially you could take pride in, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
Jeff, as we wind up, anything you'd like to share about your career and your life?
I don't know about me personally, but I would just say that we have a lot of great soldiers and airmen that are serving. And I'm always amazed. These are our brightest. I mean, these young men and women can do anything in the civilian world, yet they choose to make sacrifices in order to serve their country. And I wish that there was just a venue for me to tell their story because they are very patriotic. They sacrifice, their family sacrifice. You know, they spend a lot of time away. You can
sure.
imagine being away from home for over a year.
Oh, yeah.
Life goes on, you know, but those families are just resilient, and our soldiers are doing it because they want to serve their country and they want to be a part of something bigger than them. So I'm always amazed at the quality of our recruits. And I don't know what we've done is, you know, passing that gene, patriotic gene down to the next generation. They may be a little suspect in how they do stuff, but you know, there's no lack of patriotism in what they're doing.
That's
in their
encouraging,
bones.
yeah.
It's very encouraging.
Yeah, very good. Jeff Holmes, Major General Jeff Holmes, thank you for joining us. Adjutant General for the state of Tennessee. You bring much pride to your home community and for the entire state. We wish you well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.